Downtown Development District Design Review Committee for Thursday, January the 12th. Do a roll call, please.
Chris Bankston.
Here.
Tara Bennett.
Here.
Roy Ducresh.
Here.
Tom Stories.
Here.
Cassie Reagan. Jeffrey Smith.
Here.
First item on the agenda is going through old business, and we have approval of the minutes from November 3rd that we need to get a motion on.
There's some right here.
Okay.
Some extras.
You can take them all.
So
These are minutes from November 3rd.
yes, these are the minutes. We did not have the recording, or I didn't have the recording available to me, so now we do, and the meeting minutes are reflective of that.
I don't think I was at this meeting. No.
It's rain. Oh. I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of November 3rd.
Second.
Roy made a motion, Chris second.
Chris Bankston.
Yes.
Tara Bennett.
Yes.
Roy Ducresh.
Yes.
Tom Stories.
Yes.
Cassie Reagan. Jeffrey Smith.
Yes.
Okay. The second item is approval of the minutes from December 8th meeting. Let's take a look at that.
Shit, I want to go. That's November 3rd.
That was your office, Chris. 407 East Thomas.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Chris Bankston.
Abstain.
Tara Bennett.
Actually, it's recused.
Oh, recuse.
We just approved the minutes.
I recuse myself.
Well, he wasn't there.
Right.
You were not present, so you would not abstain. You're right.
Oh,
Yeah, you would abstain to approve it because you weren't there.
Right, abstained, you're right, he's right.
Is
You're
abstain?
right.
Okay.
He abstains the right.
Roy Ducresh.
Yes.
Tom Stories.
Yes.
Cassie Reagan. And Jeffrey Smith.
Yes.
Okay. Third item of old business is an architectural review of 112 North Oak Street.
Oh,
Is that, what is that about?
that's, well,
Do
it's,
we even need to discuss that? Or?
this is 113,
Yes.
and,
I'll just say one of the reasons why Roy is presenting this again is because in our discussions with trying to firm up processes with the city, historically, when we've had a project that was in the historic district, basically, the project may have been presented to us at one point or another, but we would never vote on it. So the UDC does say that they should be presented to the design committee for all the properties within the district. I think we haven't had a firm process of those properties that are in the historic district and how the committee looks at those properties in the historic district. So the process that we'd like to do moving forward, just to make sure that all the boxes are checked, are properties that are in the historic district are all in the DED. So the first thing that they'll do is they'll go to the historic district for approval because they typically are looking at more stringent guidelines. And then once it's been approved by them, the project would be presented to us as the last checkbox before the city does their review with their department heads for a project. So that was a discussion that Lacey and I had just to see some consistency with how the historic district is communicating, how we're communicating, and we think that that may be the process to look at so that this all flows a little bit better. If the committee has has any other recommendations, be happy to take them. But we just haven't had a consistent process for projects within the historic district with that, since basically there's 2 overlays for those properties. So we just want to develop a consistent process. So that's one that we discussed. If the committee has any additional thoughts, or if we would just like to defer to the historic district on those properties, that's also an option, so that they don't have to come before us. But we need to develop something consistent so that we know what to expect and what property owners and business owners can expect when they're getting their building permits released.
So, Michelle, isn't the ordinance that was established to establish this committee of the city ordinance, there's language in that ordinance, I think it specifically states it's properties outside the historic district. That's what I recall. I haven't read it, so I'm assuming y'all looked at that. But
So the UDC says all properties within the downtown development district. It does not say excluding or inclusive of properties for the historic district. All properties in the historic district are in the.
that's the UDC, that's not the ordinance that
Right.
established this committee.
I didn't ask Lacey about that. I don't know if there's an additional ordinance sort of helping us clear up that process.
That ordinance is a part of the UDC. Just saying.
And there were
I don't have a
ordinance.
problem with us looking at them. In fact, I'd like to look at them. But it's going to get into a conflict. What if we disagree with the historic
Right.
commission?
That's what my
That's my
concern would
point.
be.
What if we have
You
to
have to
go
go
back?
back, you have to go back before the historic district if,
Yeah, so we wouldn't have an approval
Be kind
process,
of a-
we wouldn't vote on it, we just look at it, right?
Right. Well, I think that's what we're trying to figure out for those properties is it just presented to the design committee for conceptual review, and then pending, and then a final approval is contingent upon the approval of the historic district commission?
Yeah.
Because right now, we get
Maybe so.
some projects in the historic district presented to us, but not all of them. And so, there are between 5 to 6 properties that they're looking at every month. And I'm going to begin attending those meetings, but I think since Roy is on our committee, he, out of good faith, wants to present it to us, but that's not always the case with other items. So I think we just need to develop a consistent review process.
my comment would be, if you're gonna do that through this committee, it needs to be done before the historic district. It needs to be done as a as a design review, like conceptual review of it,
Yeah,
because
we'd be following the different
once
guidelines.
you get historic district approval, like Jeffrey said,
We can't go.
you don't wanna have to go back to them if the design committee finds something that they don't really care about. Then we gotta go all back through that process again, which costs money, costs time for the owners and So I think if this committee decides that they wanna review these things, it definitely needs to be done before historic district.
And they're kind of looking at a little larger picture, and so I agree with Roy, we're just kind of the design review. Let's take a look let's sort of take that responsibility off of them. Let us take a look at it. And then it can.
Our guidelines are completely different than the historic commission guidelines,
Mhm.
and it's, yeah,
But it's all about good design.
yeah, but, we're, historical significance, compared to,
Yeah.
what-
Because on this project, you would say, why don't you have trees in front of the building? It would look nicer. And the historic district basically said, you can't have trees in front of the building. So it just, there's kind of a conflict, which I think is what he's saying, is between what we really look at and what historic district looks at, so, I don't know.
I like looking at them, I think it's fine, but I don't think we should have any voting, decision-making on it.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't, if that's what we're gonna do. I'm more concerned about the city doing stuff without us getting to see it first, within the DDT.
Like sidewalks.
So what is the committee's suggestion for this? Would we rather, we can take some time to think about it. I just think we need to develop a consistent process so that property owners know what to do, business owners know what to do, because they call us all the time, and we do send them to the historic district first, because that's what I've been previously instructed to do. But we're just trying to figure out how to streamline things. So
Well, Michelle, but they come to us, and they want a facade grant, right? So that's when we would have a review. If it's a historic commission project, if they've approved whatever they want to do to the facade, and we approved the money for it, so there's where the two come together.
Right, well, that brings in another issue, I guess, because if you look at our facade grant application, it actually says design committee approval, because our facade grant is reimbursement based.
Mhm.
So basically with the facade grant, they should be coming to, if they want the facade grant, they actually should be coming to us first to approve the design, and then coming back to us to have the facade grant approved. What we've been doing is basically, if it's in the historic district, then we take the certificate of appropriateness and we say, okay, well, it's been approved, and then the design committee and then the board can approve funds for that. But we have not, for example, Old Town Hatchet House. We didn't review those design plans for Old Town Hatchet House because they had approval from the historic district. But we did release funds to them for the reimbursement of their work because they were eligible for it. But there isn't a consistent process of, do they come to us first for the design, they do the design, and then they have to come back before us once the work is completed to have the facade grant released to them.
What we don't want to do is create a laborious process for the owners to
Right.
get, their work done, months and
And
months of review.
if they come before us for a design, then we can tell them at that point in time, you are eligible for the facade grant. You could potentially, we could potentially work out a process that says, facade grant funds contingent upon the implementation of this design within X amount of months or something like that. But, I think these are all the little bits and pieces that kind of get lost in the day-to-day, but actually make a really big difference in how we're communicating with the city and the historic district and property owners. So I'd like to take some time to maybe just think about what is the most efficient way to communicate and what process this committee would like to do moving forward.
Well, the one thing I would suggest first is to go back to the ordinance that established this committee, and what is the language in that? Because, that would tell you basically what you have to do, because that's city ordinance. And that
Take a
city
look at
ordinance
that
is,
now?
I'm sorry?
Could we take a look at that now?
Right? I don't know, if you have it in front of you.
Pull it up.
Yeah.
It's, that is, my experience of being on the planning commission is if certain ordinances are included in UDC, and therefore they're a part of the UDC. So whatever the language is for the historic commission district, that's in the UDC, and you gotta follow it. So whatever this language is, and I believe, I'm just going off of memory, that if it's out, we only reviewed things outside of the historic district, is what I recall, which is logical, right? You wouldn't have two entities, competing over approvals.
That's why I'm kind of agreeing with you, is just we can look at it from a design standpoint and make suggestions, don't vote on it. And maybe those suggestions could be brought to the district commission.
Then as a result,
So
we
they
should
can
see
sort
it,
of
we
see
should
the
see it
combined.
first then.
Yes, that's what you had said,
That's
right?
what she was saying too.
Yep.
Take a look at it first, make suggestions, and then they go.
But again, I don't want to draw something out where someone takes forever to get an approval.
no, that's-
Shit,
that is
the
a-
city of New Orleans take 2 years to get a building approved.
Here it is, right here.
I can't read that.
The Hammond Downtown Development District shall have specific authority provided in a message, there it is, provided in section blah, blah, blah. Such authority shall be exercised solely within the district. That doesn't really cover it. There it is, right, number 2. The Hammond EDD reviews those sections within its boundaries that are not zoned industrial and do not fall within the parameters of the local registered historic district, that is, are not under the purview of the Historic District Commission.
So that's the language I remembered.
Right.
Okay.
So do you still think that we should want to see them?
I would say, it wouldn't hurt. I mean,
Well, what I'm going to attend the meeting, so what I've built into my director's report is basically addresses that they are just, like, properties that they are discussing at their meeting. Okay. Yeah, I guess so. Properties that they are discussing, so I can, I'm going to be attending those meetings, so I can keep you all in the loop of the properties that they're looking at. versus having to have a design presented to us. We could still look at those, what was presented there, and I could provide a synopsis to you all.
That's great that you do that, and that's when you can also offer to those people the facade grants that we have, and that would require they come before us then.
Right.
So,
So
for
the
instance,
only-
this project here, Roy, that just dawned on me, is Sowell gonna want the city and the DDD to help with the sidewalk costs?
Yeah.
He
Um,
does.
We've talked about that, and, you know, La Coretta, which he paid for the sidewalk with the understanding that in the future, that he paid 100% of it, that, you know, so I got an email from them yesterday that they are currently reviewing that for reimbursement.
We
La
are-
Coretta sidewalks.
Right,
So-
when Mary Royer sent me the letter and the request, I've been working with Lacey. We have to, I think we need to firm up that process as well, because what would be ideal is if someone is planning to put in sidewalks, that plan is presented to the council and presented to the DDD so that they know that it's coming.
Mhm.
And that, like, there's basically an introduction presentation, so to speak, to both of those parties, so that whenever they do come for us for reimbursement, which tends to be, you know, upwards of $10,000 or more dollars, that the council and the board can make a full decision about that, and they're aware that a request like that is coming. And that will also help us budget for those things,
Mhm.
because at this point in time, we basically don't have a line item, so to speak, for sidewalk matching. So it's important for our budget consideration, I think the council's consideration as well, that there be more process there that is not just, you know, if they build these sidewalks under the impression that the three-way split is there. And that's not to say that we want to make a laborious process, but it's just maybe communicating a little bit earlier on, so that we can make budget considerations and make an informed decision. I think that the only lingering question that I have with respect to a facade grant is, so basically, if a property is in the historic district and that work is approved, we will take this certificate of appropriateness as the evidence that we need that that work was approved to do the facade grant reimbursement. Therefore, they still do not need to come before the design committee. Okay. Well, this was helpful for me. I don't know if it was helpful for you all, if you're still
No,
lost.
it's great. I'm glad you brought it up. And I'm glad that you're gonna start attending the Historic District Commission meetings, and hopefully also you have time to get to the Planning Commission meetings, because those three entities, you know, I've always said need to get together. You know, because they're bumping into each other all the time.
What are the planning meetings again? What night?
I think it's a
Thursday.
Thursday at 5. But they have a work
They have a work
session,
session.
you know, before that, which might be the more appropriate thing to attend.
Okay to move on, or do we need to
Yeah,
vote
so
on anything?
given that, so basically, we won't vote on things within the historic
Okay.
district.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and move on.
All right, under new business, the first item is the facade grant for 123 South Oak Street. There's an attachment here.
Where is it?
So that is the application that you
Oh.
have. Let me
Hello.
go ahead and pull up
There's no pictures or anything?
there are pictures, I didn't,
Where is that?
Oh, I know, that's the,
Right on the corner of,
give me one moment, I'm gonna pull them up on the
South Oak
projector.
northeast corner, I guess, right there. Morrison.
Oh, there's by your
At the
book
barrel
sale.
vault,
yeah.
and he painted the brick building.
Oh, yeah.
On the corner.
John Fiducia's old office.
Yeah, Fiducia's old building,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's right across the street from the,
What they doing with it?
he had to replace the roofing on it, and then he painted the brick. I think
I hadn't seen
I don't know
it.
if he replaced the windows or not.
Okay, so
I
this
think you
is,
did.
if you take a look up here, I put the pictures up, so,
Which one is that?
let me go to the Google. This, building sustained, a lot of damage, after Hurricane Ida. And it has been vacant for quite some time.
Yeah.
This is from Google Street View, so this was in June of 2022, so you can kind of see the roof old, you know, very damaged to the before photos. And they also obviously had a lot of interior damage because of that, and then the resulting exterior is brick, and it needed obviously some maintenance there. So those are the before pictures, after pictures. They have cleaned the brick and have made repairs to the brick and the mortar. They've done a fresh coat of paint, which you can see here. They did clean up some of the windows, and they also had historic district approval to do all of this. So all of the facade facing, or all the thoroughway facing facades are painted. The, I guess, east end of the building butts up to the building next door. Kyle Tallow, his construction firm will be located out of here, and then there are several other suites that they are renting out to do sort of like a salon co-op model, I guess is the best way I could describe it. So there will be smaller suites that wellness or salon, hair, nails, etc. can rent out. And then there will be a small room in the back that can be rented out for banquets and receptions, and they have partnerships with some of the restaurants to do catering for a small event space in the back that you can rent for a few hours. So this property will be no longer vacant spring of this year, and if you look at his application, basically what the expenses are, like I mentioned with the brick and the paint, so he is eligible for the full amount of the grant.
I move we approve the grant application.
I'll second it.
Chris Bankton,
Yes.
Claire Bennett,
Yes.
Brady Fresh,
Yes.
Tom Stories,
Yes.
Kathy Reagan, and Joe Porter.
Yes.
Anything else
Okay.
to put up there?
I do. Yeah, there we go.
That's better.
Let's take a look here.
Next item,
Mhm.
good. Nominations for open committee seat.
So in
Does
your.
anyone have any nominations, or do you have some people?
The only recommendation, so the way the bylaws are written for the design committee are that any design committee member or board of director member can make a nomination. So this will be on the agenda for the board next Wednesday. We do have a process in our bylaws that says how we fill the vacant seat. Once they're nominated, the interested party will submit a resume or biography to me, and then the board ultimately appoints the design committee member.
I have a person who is interested, Michelle Juno.
Okay.
And then Monica Perez says she would do it too, but she's already on the planning committee, so I kind of talked her out of.
So basically the requirements are that they must live and be registered to vote in Tangipahoa Parish, and that they are actively involved in one of the following industries: architecture, real estate, interior design, contract,
She's in tears, isn't she?
She's in tears, she's with our
graphic
office.
design,
Mhm.
artist, city planners, a previous member of design committee, board of directors, or Hammond Historic District. So.
I guess Pierre couldn't do another day though, huh? He's probably
Yeah, he's
overextended.
I give you a name also,
Yeah.
a young lady from our office also that's interested. So. That's Brooke Roberts. She's an intern architect. She's not licensed architect, but she's in training, I guess, what do you call it, emerging professional?
So we could potentially have the seat filled next week, contingent upon me getting information from those interested parties. But if you think on anyone else, you'd like to recommend anyone else, I also let the board know, and, so we're not doing an open call because the nominations can only come from the design committee and the board, so, if there's anyone else interested, let me know and they can send me the required information.
Okay.
Is there terms?
Yes, well, technically the term is 2 years. I don't think the bylaws say that their term.
We all probably should be kicked off.
And Pierre been on for 25 years, so.
Is Pierre being on, and this started in 89, 90?
It started, yeah, I started it.
You started, so that goes beyond, no, it was actually,
When I was on the DDD, it was, I was on it. Remember I went to meet, Mason Foster was the mayor.
yeah.
It was Paul Murphy and I and Roy, I think you were there, and maybe Chris was there, and we had Brent Bombach maybe, we all had a meeting at Jacques Mel,
I remember that. Yeah.
convincing Mason that we should form this committee and how important it was, and after the meeting, he pulled me aside and goes, Jeff, I think I can support this if you put some normal people in the committee.
So there's architects.
No
and there's
designers.
Normal people.
I don't know, repeat that story often, because
Yeah,
I
that's-
get a kick out of it. I guess we're being recorded, right?
We are. We're actually live streaming, if you didn't know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we are.
We're like on,
Someone warned us of
we're on
that.
Facebook or something?
We're on YouTube.
Do we have any viewers?
I
Do-
actually don't know.
Can you tell if anybody's viewing it or not?
I can.
I'm doubting anybody.
You are,
These meetings will be live streamed moving forward.
Moving
the
forward.
design committee for the AIA.
Well, thanks for warning us.
I'm gonna behave from now on.
Uh-huh.
That was
I
one.
mean, that was a true story, but.
Right.
We have one person watching.
Okay, moving on. Number 3 item, our goals and work plan, Michelle.
Yes, so I included a quick, just kind of jotting down things that we have in progress and items that are on some items on our master plan. There's a lot of things happening at the office right now, so this was sort of like a draft version, but I just wanted to kind of, as we start this new year, kind of maybe put a focus and get you all thinking. We do already have a lot in progress, and I think the biggest item that I'm working on right now is building those relationships with the city administration, the department heads specifically in the building department, planning and parks and ground, and then also with the historic district. And just us having more regular communication, so that our overlapping work is more efficient, so to speak. Obviously, Roy is on his way to potentially presenting us with a Hammond welcome sign, so that has been something that the city has focused on and dedicating funds to. So that's potentially happening this year. There's work that's happening with that. We have the Railroad Park History exhibit project that we're working on, and then continued discussion around Thomas Street lighting. Yep, there's not, I guess, this is just kind of me putting things I know that are happening. I do know that we've had some issues at the intersection of, well, regarding our master plan.
Has anybody seen any of that? Huh?
What was that?
No, I was just side talking, but it was about the Thomas Street lighting project.
What about it?
I mean, what's the status of that?
So it's a long haul. Basically, I think I need to sort of sit down with Lacey and talk about it a little bit more. The only information I have is per the meeting I think we had in maybe October, or maybe it was November. No, it was November. I think it was in October, where, I mean, legislative session would be starting in a couple of months, so usually it's in the spring. I believe that it would not be during this legislative session, it would be next legislative session, but I need to talk with Lacey and kind of see what we've submitted, what that looks like, where that is in the process.
The reason I ask is I would like to make sure that this project doesn't get ahead of us like they have done in the past, that we have an opportunity to see the design so we can make input. Some of these kind of things have slipped through the cracks.
I think you must have missed the meeting where that came up with Lacey. we jumped her, you think you weren't here, we jumped her butt about that same thing,
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah, let's
we
just
didn't
keep,
get, you
Yeah.
submitted something for capital outlay, but we didn't get to see what was
Yeah,
submitted.
yeah.
But it was just, she said it was just money,
yeah.
so, but,
Yeah.
I'll
I do remember
follow
that.
up with Lacey.
You know, I'm looking at it from our committee's perspective, that from the design standpoint, what are they doing, you know, and like, we're doing lighting, I know, but while we have the sidewalks torn up, are we gonna do street trees, are we gonna do, you know, are we gonna complete our sidewalk, prototype in that area? And what from our committee's perspective, what does it look like and how does it function? And, you know, maybe some of these things you have on your other list about pedestrian concerns at crossings can be dealt with in this project, you know, that you're not talking about a whole lot of, but some of those things can be, you know, if we have an opportunity to see it, we can interject some of those kind of things, other than it just going out like that parking lot project that happened down by Kate Street, you know, after the fact, we saw it, so that was my only comment, sorry, interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, I think this is just kind of a point for, like, a time for some discussion around these items. I'm gonna follow up with Lacey particularly about that, and, you know, and I know there were some numbers thrown around, but, you know, what's the potential, as we are also, we'll be planning for our fiscal year 2024 budget, how are we planning our budget maybe around some of these items so that, you know, it adds to and can leverage what the city is bringing down from the state or what the city is already allocating for sidewalks, so that all of our money is working together and better.
so for transparency's sake, I just want everyone to know that I did submit a letter to Michelle about some ideas that I was having about what we should do. So I think that's something y'all all might want to do, just to get the ball rolling on some things that could happen to improve our downtown. Because, you know, our success is awesome, but I don't think we can rest. We got to keep pushing, you know, the items, and
I see
these things are good, yeah.
Yeah, I see on here the master plan needs to be adopted by the city council. Well, that's kind of our guidebook, right? Look at that master plan, and identify some projects, long-term, short-term, and long-term projects we need to think about. Is that what you did, kind of?
Kind of, but there's also some things that just keep reoccurring, you
Like
know.
maintenance things? and-
You know, garbage can, dealing
Trees.
with dead trees, you know, delivery trucks blocking streets, you know, there's a lot of things that are out there, security, you know, vandalism, just a lot of things that, you know, I would hope that the board can, get some staff to help Michelle, and a person with a clipboard that goes around downtown every day, you know, checking off, you know, what do I see that needs to get dealt with?
Mhm.
You know.
Well, I will
those are
say, I
things.
think that I've started that process with trying to develop the relationships with the department heads and the administration, and really just communicating more often. Yesterday, I actually took about 3 hours, and I walked around to some of the businesses on the west side, along Oak and Charles, and while I was walking, I was like, took pictures of, you know, some broken bricks and items on the sidewalk. So I think that as we are getting out more, and we actually are hiring an administrative assistant, you know, we can kind of have more visibility and communicate with the city things that we see. So hopefully we're able to kind of build that into our daily workflow, just as we're doing our normal stuff. You know, I'm visiting with merchants and talking to business owners, so, you know, I see a snap a picture, I can send that over to, you know, the respective department and put in a work order for it, so it at least starts, so that they know that it's there, because I think that's the biggest issue, is just communication, so.
Thank you, Michelle, that's great.
I think that, and then anytime I've spoken with the department head, you know, I think that they're more than willing to help, they just don't always know what's going on, so the communication's really key.
Perfect, that's awesome.
And I guess, I kind of didn't finish my list here for the master plan. Obviously, there's, you know, other items in our master plan that kind of overlap with design projects, but at a minimum, our master plan hasn't been adopted by city council, and that is something that is, I guess, suggested in our legislation that we do. If we have a master plan, it's important that the council do approve it. So I'm kind of communicating with the board to see if that's something that we're going to do this year. One of our items is build complete streets and protect pedestrians at intersections. Obviously, that goes along with our streetscape and that design. We've had particular issues at the corner of Thomas and Oak. And I spoke with Amanda yesterday, and in addition to visibility issues, there may be some timing issues with the lights. So, you know, the sidewalks are pretty, not the sidewalks, the crosswalks are pretty worn in that area. So I actually sent an email to DOTD yesterday just to see where, because there's obviously a state highway that goes to that intersection. So it may be a kind of convoluted process, but just taking a look at these things that we know that are issues and seeing what are our options for that, because not only is it a safety concern, but that building can very likely be destroyed for the next crash that occurs at that intersection, so it's a concern there. So yeah, any ideas that you have related to our work for this upcoming year?
I got another one for you, 'cause I think it's an easy and attainable one that I've brought up previously. I think I actually sent some photographs, and I can reissue them if you want me to, but our historic buildings need plaques on them all over downtown that describe the date of the building and the history of the building, something simple. I remember seeing it, I was somewhere on vacation, I think it was somewhere in Seattle area, and I saw these little nicely done plaques, kind of like what you're proposing for the park, for the history, but each building would have its, you know, its name and its, you know, the date it was constructed. And that way, you know, be part of the, actually, we could probably get the tourist commission involved and possibly helping with the funding, the historic district, you know, and our own committee, the whole board.
Our history exhibit work group has talked about that on numerous occasions, about that being kind of the, you know, once we do the history in the park, is to how do we carry that on, because there's a lot more history we need to tell.
Right.
And what we're doing in the park is basically going to be about railroad history in Hammond, but, you know, so many other opportunities to tell the stories, and the building thing came up several different times.
Yeah, and the historic district already has an excellent walking tour that they've developed. And so, you know, potentially maybe those are some of the buildings that we focus on first to get plaques. So there's definitely phases that we can look out for that. That's something I would love to see, and that we've discussed extensively. So
You could even, you know, again, this could be a cost-sharing thing where, you know, the tourist commission, the DDD, the city, the building owners all can chip in, and that could be easily fundable. You know, it's not, I don't think it's that much money, you know.
The little bronze plaque we did in the park was like $2,500 maybe, or $33,000.
I feel like it's
Cash
a little
bronze.
bit smaller.
Huh? But you'd be smaller than that, so
Yeah.
We could get some
you'd be
people-
smaller, so you could do it, you know, probably for $2,000, $1,750.
I guess we'd have to think about the installation to those on historic structures with the historic district, but
Yeah, put the screws in the mortar joints, that's all you gotta do.
There's a little one at the Perone building that's just on my block at the corner, you know, it used to be the old sanitary barber.
Mhm.
at Perone. So there's one there that I've noticed, so it's kind of like that.
Yeah,
A big deer on it.
it's something that would be easy to do, and I think very, very helpful to the city. Anyway.
okay. Any other discussion around some of our 2023 goals? I can deliver my reports if you'd like.
Go for it. That's the last item.
Okay, so I kind of already mentioned this, you know, just streamlining processes with the city, the department heads, and historic district. That's taken, you know, quite some time to kind of just meet with those folks and communicate with them, so I'm working on that. There's a cross-agency meeting on February 10th, Friday, February 10th. I believe it's at 1 o'clock in here. I'm sure that most of you may know that the Louisiana Main Street program, so the DDD holds the accreditation for our community's Main Street program. The beginning of the Main Street program actually started with the historic district's sort of evolution. So with our state, both the Main Street program and the Historic Preservation Office are located in the same department, basically. So as we are kind of figuring out our connections locally, we have the state office coming on February 10th, and this was coordinated by the historic district, to have the historic district, city council, planning and zoning, building department, you know, at city administration, at the DDD, are all invited to come to this meeting to understand where we're all overlapping and how all of our work works together. So they've invited the DDD to attend, that we can obviously extend that to the design committee. And I mean, it's open to the public, so really anyone can come. But that meeting on February 10th will hopefully kind of put some light bulbs out for people, and with the city council being present, the hope is that we can all understand how we're all working and work more efficiently.
Excellent. Is that Ray Schreiber gonna be running that?
Ray Scriber, and he has an assistant. Her name is Amanda Lantana. So half of her role is Louisiana Main Street, and the other half of her role is working with CLGs. So at the state level, they also are trying to figure out how is it more integrated, and how are things working more efficiently together. So
That's great. Glad you're doing that.
well, all the credit to the historic district for planning it, honestly. So one item that has come out of sort of communicating with the city a little bit more are demolitions. There have been several demolitions that have occurred within the DDD, within our district. Now we do not, the UDC does not specify demolitions specifically, that we have approval over them. Obviously, any demolitions in the historic district are very, protected because of their guidelines, but the UDC does not specify demolitions for design committee review or approval. But what we are doing is basically they're sending me a notification of demolition, and so I will include that in my reports moving forward as I get them. So there's been a request and approval soon to be issued for 1706 Southwest Railroad Avenue. This is actually a commercial development behind area, I can pull it up if you'd like me to, behind where Jimmy John's is. And it's kind of interesting, because it's actually never been leased. I think the way the building was built, it's been hard to
Which one's she talking about?
Jimmy Starr building?
Yeah, they tried to do some uplift to the
They
facade.
wanna tear it
one time.
down?
Remember that?
It's never been
No one
occupied.
has ever leased that thing.
I
It's
mean,
behind Jimmy John's, so it's kind of like a
It
mirror
kind of
image of.
faces the wrong direction, but that's not the
Yeah.
problem, just a bad design.
I think this is it.
You wanna tear it down, did you say?
There is a
Did somebody
demolition
buy that?
request.
Yeah, it looks like maybe
Wait,
someone
let
bought
me
it.
check to make sure. 1706 Southwest.
That's definitely the building that's behind Jimmy John.
Or north of it?
Yes.
That's it, there's the picture.
It is.
So,
They're gonna take that whole building down?
That is, I don't know.
Or maybe they're demoing the facade or something?
well, Michelle, I mean, if demolition requires a building permit, right? They gotta get a demolition permit, so you gotta get a permit from the city to tear something down. Wouldn't that signal, well, you need a permit within the DDD, the design committee should look at that permit approval, right?
So,
And I'm splitting hairs here, but.
right, well, so Lacey and I have discussed that, how the city is defining a building permit and their interpretation of a building permit. So if the committee wanted to look at clarifying that language to include demolitions, that might be something that we want to do.
I think so.
But right now, the interpretation is that a demolition permit is a demolition permit, and a building permit is a building permit.
It's still a permit. I'd lay on the word permit. Can we get city council to amend the ordinance to include that? I'm sure you could, right?
Something we
I
can
think
look
that's
at.
worth it, I mean, that's just my opinion. Though, I don't think anyone's gonna complain about having that building torn down.
Yeah, I was about to say, is it a concern? of
I'm less concerned
just
about it being
making sure
torn
they
down
don't tear
and
something
more
down we
concerned
don't
about
want?
what's gonna be built there.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'll
That'd
be
be our
honest,
concern.
Yeah, to see what.
I think, I don't, I mean, it's important that they're informing us of things that are happening, surrounding us and in the district, and obviously informing the design committee. But, I don't always know the extent of a demolition, so, maybe moving forward too, just kind of seeing, maybe once a permit is issued, we'll announce it. I think they just sent their application in. I don't want to say anything prematurely, and, the is obviously in a public forum, so you may want to think a little bit more strategically about that, and that's on me. But either way, I think, yes, to your point, Jeffrey, maybe just cleaning up that language a little bit more, so that's a bit more clear for us.
Because of course, the controversy that happened over at the old feed and seed, you know, that was something that could have been prevented if that's what the city wanted, if it had come before us, because it got itself outside of the historic district, so.
Well, and also, I mean, there was cleaners that got demolished, and then 210 South Cherry got demolished, so I think, as it has been these older structures that have gone down, I just think it's kind of put things in a different perspective, and obviously has created some communication to see what that looks like. So as mentioned, I am attending the historic district meetings, either the work sessions or the actual meeting. It may work better sometimes to attend the work session, otherwise it'll work for my schedule better to attend the actual meeting. I attended their meeting in December, on December 28th, and I mean, their agenda is available for you all to kind of look at, but this is just copy and pasted from there, of the properties that they're working with. So I'm not gonna really comment too much on them, but they are working basically with those properties, and as they're discussing, you know, maintenance of the property, I'm trying to get loop into the conversation to see about what some business development plans are for these, especially the ones that may be vacant. There was one that was tabled or was included on the agenda initially, but was tabled, and that's the old Richardson's Fashion location. And so I believe that will go on the agenda for February. I'm not privy to any of the information about that.
No, that's next week, actually.
Next week. Oh, it is next week. I'm like thinking that
What is the Richardson? Is that the Discovery's furniture?
No, it's on the corner of Cherry and Thomas. We did the design for Matt Hunt.
Oh, yeah.
Renovating the building.
Okay.
Now, that brings up a point. See, he's gonna wanna do the sidewalk split thing, so how do I get that in process?
Well, let me talk with Lacey to see, because, I mean, also, Stoa Group wants to do their sidewalks for their, you know, sister expansion, so, I'm feeling that those two would be coming down the pipeline, and then we also have, Saul's previous request for La Coretta, so we've got a few of those things that we just kind of need to figure out.
Yeah, there's several of them, so, but I wanna, I guess officially write a letter or something to
Right.
get the ball rolling and copy Lacey and so forth, but, there's another thing too that you need to be aware of, because I missed out on this because of the LEA changed their regulations on, if you renovate a historic building, you can get get a rebate on your property taxes. In other words, they stay at the assessed value of the building before it's renovated for 2 5-year periods, so a total of 10 years. But I was able to get those as one of our projects after it was renovated. And so I assumed we could do the same thing going forward, but they changed the rules that you gotta get it approved before you start construction. So I missed out on it on the Boltzell building. So, and I wish somebody, you know, with the DDD or the Historic Commission, someone with the city had notified us that, hey, make sure you apply for that before you start construction. So,
Is somebody else doing that as well?
I'm gonna make sure. I
he's-
just hit me that I gotta remember to tell him that. Because he's gotten approval from the SHPO and from the
okay.
Park Service for the tax credits. So, when you'll get, there wasn't a quorum. I think if you were at that meeting in December, there wasn't a quorum to get the approval for his Historic Commission approval on that project.
Oh, okay.
Because, you know, there wasn't people, and Ryan is in our firm, so he
Oh,
couldn't
I
accuse
They couldn't,
himself.
that's why mine got approved and his,
Yeah.
y'all didn't, okay.
Yeah, it was on the agenda initially, and then it was just crossed out, so it wasn't even discussed at the meeting. But yeah, so you can kind of see there's a few addresses on here, particularly 116 West Thomas, which has been vacant for quite some time, and the city is
That's a
working
mess, that building.
pretty diligently to try to save that structure.
That's a wall.
A structural engineer was hired and assessed the property yesterday, to see where things are with it. Because it's important that we're not losing any more historic structures, so, I'm staying in the loop with all of those items, and we'll continue to relay the information back to you all. we kind of, I guess during fall time, we kind of like hit a stopping point a little bit with our history exhibit work group, but I am going to convene the group probably sometime in February and just approach it with a refreshed sense of continuation. Because we had good momentum and then, you know, things just got really busy. But we do have a timeline we need to stick to because we do have a grant award.
I was going to ask you about the grant timing, yeah.
Yes, we do have a grant award that we have to abide by.
When is that?
Has to be spent by August of this year.
Oh, we gotta hustle.
Right. So, so yes, that will be a big effort in the spring to, you know, winter, spring to get those narratives and do our presentations. And I know it's important that we make a presentation to City Council so that they're informed. Obviously, all the public input related to this. So that will be a main focus area to accomplish. We do have bricks for sale still. We're actually running a 23% off promotion, which is kind of funny.
I took advantage of that, by the way.
Oh, really? I haven't checked.
I saw it, I said, how many, my 2 bricks?
Well, that's good. If you're still looking to buy a brick, we really are trying to meet a goal of around, I think it's 330 that would finish completing out that last sort of banner that's in front of the tall column. We still have about almost 130 left to sell before we meet that goal. A lot of people are really anticipating these bricks being installed this spring, so if we don't meet that goal, we'll probably at the end of this month, because I'm trying to figure out if we can maybe extend the sale to try to meet that goal, but it's important that those bricks are installed in the spring because our folks have waited long enough.
Are y'all promoting it at Farmers Market?
I am. I mean, at the table.
Yeah, I
we
just
are.
wondered, that might be a place to sell some.
Yeah, but right now you can get them for less than $100 with the promotion. If it's text brick, logo bricks, I guess that brings it down to like around maybe 125 or something like that. But if you know anyone who wants to buy a brick, please spread the word because we want to make sure that we try to meet that goal, if not as close to it as possible. And obviously those are all funds that would go into the historic, you know, the history plaques that we're doing. So it all is a part of, you know, funding that project too. We have one more bench left to sell before the 21 are completed. And I know that those lead times are very long. I know, well, the mayor basically has one on reserve, so I'm going to communicate with him just to see if he's going to do the final push to try to get that one. But we just have one left to sell. And obviously those would probably not be ordered and installed until the fall. That probably won't align with the brick installation, but that's update there. And then, like I said, we're hiring an administrative assistant. Those applications are due on the 15th, so if you know anyone who would be interested, I'm just trying to get everyone to spread the word to apply. All of the information is on our website.
I was going to try to catch you before you left the bricks and benches. Don't forget that we still have furniture we want to purchase.
Yes.
And that we kind of dropped the ball on that back in the summer. You know, meeting with girl from Landscape Farms and just getting some prices. We really don't know what it's going to cost.
Come on, little bistro table.
Yeah, we were going to do some umbrellas and bistro tables. They've got picnic tables out there now. I see people sitting in them all the time.
Yeah, they are.
So if we can get some nice furniture. And apparently there were some carpet people that, well, we were going to try to sell to carpet. You know, like, didn't we talk about
Sell to
having
carpet.
Doing some
corporate,
Corporate. Oh, corporate sponsorship.
not carpet
Okay,
people.
like, what are you talking
carpet,
about?
we're doing some outdoor carpet.
No, you had, I think that Chelsea had said at one time there were people interested in buying a couple tables and chairs, you know, and.
Well, here's a thought. You know, we may have one bench left to sell. Like, I understand that was a goal that was established. You know, could there be an option to take a look at, I guess, given that we've gotten input from people and people have purchased something, maybe seeing if they would be interested in changing their sponsorship over to a table that would have a placard or something like that.
Instead of a bench, you mean?
Mhm.
Potentially, I don't know, something to talk with folks about, because,
I think it's a good idea. I think you'll,
you know, there are quite a few benches there, and I'm just thinking maybe like, what's the best use of, our time and resources, so to speak. If there's an option of a table that has a placard, you know, they could be honored in the same way. I mean, truthfully, the tables are maybe used more frequently than the benches, especially during farmers market hours. I know that the picnic tables that are there, they're just temporary and they're unsightly. But, you know, for the market at least, that furniture is kind of essential to, you know, that event's operation. But also during the week, people can sit at a table and eat their lunch.
Have their lunch,
and stuff
yeah.
like
Oh,
that. So,
yeah.
My point of bringing that up was
During the day.
for you to put on your calendar, and I'll be glad to meet with you. I can contact Mallory from Landscape
yeah, we
Farms
can figure out.
and try to pick out what we want and get some numbers on it from her with your city discount. So we can at least have some, you can go to people, and you know what they're gonna cost and what you're gonna sell them for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think, and then looking at options too, I'm assuming the tables will probably be bolted down, but the chairs not so.
no.
Oh, no.
No?
I mean, the things at parks today are
I
like,
kind of want to move everything around.
yeah, it's people kind of move them and they set up their little, you know, you can pull two together and they have a bigger group sit together and it's, people like that flexibility.
Okay.
Of course, you know, how many are gonna walk away?
I don't know, I think
Yeah.
with the place being well lit like that,
Yeah.
it's all night long, isn't it? 24
Yeah,
hours,
it's
I'm
on,
sure.
it's on
I
all
don't
night.
think anybody's gonna, but you know what, if they do, shame on them, but you gotta have an honor system.
Something to discuss anyway, Michelle.
Right, so for outdoor furniture and security cameras.
Michelle,
Don't have cameras.
since we're on the farmers markets, one other thing, that somebody brought something up to me, that there's a few people concerned about closing the street. That I think it's a great idea, and I think it's exactly what needs to happen. But their concerns were a rogue driver, you know, driving through the street, you know.
Yeah.
So one thing we might want to put on your agenda is to think about is removable bollards that could be installed along the street. That would alleviate that fear.
Just
you
in
know.
that one spot, huh?
Yeah, just across
You
the
know,
street.
because you don't need to do it.
I mean, if
coming
you had
from the
big
north.
bucks, you'd have the kind that go down to the ground and
Pneumatic,
automatically
yeah.
come up.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But you also have ones
Like
that
on
just
Bourbon Street.
pick and just slide in,
Mhm.
you know. Yeah, well, it happened on, you mentioned Bourbon Street, because there was some incident like that, so they installed bollards that.
Or you just park a dump truck full of gravel there at the end.
Well,
People have
I
done
think
that, that's what they do in New Times Square, at like,
Or manure, like on,
well, you know, that's what they do in Times Square, they park big dump
Back to
trucks
the
full of
Future.
sand. You don't hit that.
But this is
Just
a
so
more
you know, one
elegant-
item that internally that I need to work on is just, because basically when
They
we
have one full of watermelon.
talked to the city and we're like, look, this is our only option to really have the market here, we need to close the street down. It basically became, okay, how can the DDD close the street down? So we have barricades on site, we have to close one lane, I say we, me, I have to do this every Saturday morning.
You have
I have
cones
to
that-
close one of the lanes down on Southwest Railroad, and evidently, I mean, the closure in of itself is not like, we're not following the processes that typically would be required for a closure. We are supposed to have an officer present during the hours that the road is closed. So I'm going to communicate with the police department to kind of see, maybe we just position them in front of those barricades for right now in the interim, so it's very obvious, especially to the, you know, westbound, you know, people coming from the west or coming from the east going west, that lane is closed, because I think that's kind of the issue, folks that are trying to make a right turn.
yeah.
And some additional signage too. I can't do everything by myself, so once I get an administrative assistant, I'm hopefully able to do a little bit more. And I know that, you know, it basically is overtime, paying city workers overtime to help us do that on Saturday morning. So it's not really feasible to task them with that. So right now, there are not very many, other than getting out there at 6 o'clock in the morning, which I don't necessarily have the capacity to do every Saturday morning because I wind up working 6 days. Trying to do my best with it.
Well, you're doing a good job.
So I know it needs some work, and I'm trying to see how I can get a little bit more support to do what needs to be done, because there's not very much I have physically the capacity more to do, honestly.
So right now, are you by yourself in there?
So I'm the only we have a temporary person that one of our interns that we've kind of temporarily have been paying so that she can
Mhm.
kind of help the office, just to keep it open, honestly, and answer calls and talk to people as they come into the office. But right now, I'm the only person.
Staff.
So, that's why we're hiring for administrative assistant, and we have a few interns coming on as the semester starts up, next week and the week after. So I'll be getting help soon, but it takes quite a bit to train them, and, so I'm a little overwhelmed, for being honest. But, I'm doing my best with everything.
Are you getting some submissions on applications?
Oh, yes, we have
Okay.
plenty.
Yeah, plenty.
I think there's probably over 60 applicants, so
Okay.
that of itself is reviewing, and,
That's
It's
a
not the same
task.
for architects, is it?
yeah. So, just wanted to still put it out there, though, if the higher quality the applicant, the better. And so we'll be looking at those applications, and hopefully hiring someone next week if I can get all the timing figured out, and sorted. So, anyway.
Cool. All right. If there's no other business, I motion that we
I'll make
adjourn.
a motion that we adjourn so Michelle can go back to work.
Second. Thanks, Michelle. You're doing great.